So on this week's episode of The Catch Up, we're joined by Rob Davinson from Awin. He's a content analyst over there, and he provides us with loads of valuable insights into Awin Axis and the various verticals that have really stormed through the lockdown periods, including various things on gardening, seeds, and also a little light-hearted set on Gardener's Dream. It's quite a light-hearted conversation, but there's a lot of info to take from it as well with Awin's access to data. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Right, so we're joined this week by Rob Davinson from Awin, and I believe you're global content analyst. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that is right. That's it's another one of those classic made-up sort of job titles. but yeah, that's mine.
So, as I understand it, do you look after strategy and sort of delivery for any content that's going out to publishers and things like that, basically?
Yeah, kind of. It's actually it's been quite a good role. I've been doing it for about 3 years now, and I've been working at Awin for about 7 or 8 now, which is mad to think. But I was originally on the publisher team there because I came from more of a publisher background.
Okay.
And was the sort of travel specialist for the network, and did that for a few years. It was really good fun, great team that I was on in the UK, and got the opportunity. What I was really keen on was just more of the content side of things and writing articles, getting involved with some of the white papers, doing a few presentations and that kind of thing. And so the opportunity came up to join the strategy team. And so that's kind of what I do now. And it goes across a load of different formats, whether it's articles and delivering keynotes and hosting our podcast, obviously. So we've got Awin Talks. I'm going to plug it right off the bat.
Yeah, please do.
but yeah, so we get to do that on a monthly basis, and yeah, it's given us a lot of variety in producing content around some of the insights and trends that we see at the network. Talking about that connects up to the wider e-commerce and digital advertising sector, and producing that and sharing that with our various clients and audiences. Yeah.
So obviously Awin is a huge player in the affiliate space, and it's safe to say do you sort of lead on the thought leadership and that sort of stuff? So will all of that, will those strategies come from you guys and your team?
Yeah, so there's myself and there's only 2 of us actually in that global strategy team. There's myself and my boss Kevin, who's the global kind of strategy director. And between us, we, as you say, kind of produce a lot of the thought leadership content, the kind of opinions that are kind of led from the network, etc. But there's obviously, because we've got, over 1,000 staff around the world, a lot of them will get involved in producing content as well, and we'll look to them to provide additional, opinions and insights related to what they're working on.
Okay, cool. So with the podcast, it's a question we've got since the beginning. They're coming up to us going, why do you do it? Why are you bothering with this? It's sort of died away a bit over the last sort of few months. People are starting to see the value in it. But was the podcast something that you sort of had to fight to sort of get implemented? Was that your idea that you had to drag forward, or was that something that came from higher up?
Yeah, no, it was something we initiated. I mean, personally, I'm like a big podcast fan. I listen to tons of podcasts about a whole host of different topics, and I knew that there were a couple of affiliate ones out there, but maybe not many, and not many of like the big kind of companies that obviously provide a lot of the infrastructure behind the industry. And I just thought that given our kind of range of different clients and the sectors we work in and the markets that we work in, that there was actually a real opportunity for us to facilitate those conversations with the various people and businesses that we work with, and that could actually be quite useful and beneficial to people wanting to learn a bit more about our industry around the world. So it's just like another format for getting your content out there, because there's so many different ways in which people can engage and interact with your content. It's not literally write an article and publish it and hope that they read it. It's about trying to kind of figure out, okay, what else can we do to allow people to find us in whichever space they happen to be kind of engaging with online, whether that's video or audio or text on a page, etc. So yeah, it was something that we kind of initiated, and they're really good actually at Awin, because they do let you have a lot of independence, and I'm particularly lucky in that respect to just go off and come up with an idea like that. And generally speaking, unless it's completely crazy, they'll kind of back you and say, try it out and see if it works, which is really good.
Have you found it hard sort of porting that more long form way of doing things, whether it's the sort of the yearly report, the annual report and things like that? Have you found that hard to port over to the podcast format, or has it been pretty seamless?
No, it's definitely takes a bit of thought, and because, like you say, the Awin report's this big annual kind of document that we pull together, lots of articles, case studies, lots of interviews, and things like that. And it's the design team that we've got. They work really hard on it and making it as visually appealing as possible. And we've been doing that now for about, I think, 3 or 4 years. And it's a really nice, like, physical document. We get like these nice printed copies created and they're then distributed and given away at various events around the world, etc. But actually kind of then taking all of that content that's gone into that document and, like you say, almost needing to adapt it for the different mediums that you want to then use so that people can access it does take quite a lot of work a lot of the time. So you're trying to make sure, I think, a lot of the time that whatever you put into the report has some longevity on it, so that when you can repurpose it 2 months, 3 months down the line, it's still relevant, which is sometimes difficult because you know well yourselves, like, things in this industry change so quickly that it's hard to create something that is still going to have value 3-4 months down the line.
It's quite it's funny you say that, because it's something we struggled with recently. It's something we struggled with when we were coming up with the sort of what we were going to do with an actual podcast. It's all right, somebody saying to us, right, we need a podcast, then you go away and we sort of were like,
where do we go? Like, how does this happen?
But having listened to a few of your podcasts on the hearing how much insight and how many statistics and sort of how specific you're getting with things as you go through it, I suppose that the nature of the guests you're getting on as well. Again, they're thought leaders and they're really established in what they're doing. It must take a lot of work and preparation for each of those episodes.
Yeah, I'd say that like it's actually a really good contrast what you guys do to what we've got. What we try to do is to try to kind of I guess compress as much as we possibly can into as short a window of time as possible. And so we try to keep it down to about half an hour or 40 minutes max. And it's difficult because you want to get somebody on and you want to chat to them and you want them to feel relaxed so that you're not having just a very scripted, regimented, artificial, dynamic between you. But at the same time, you don't want the listener to disengage, and you want them to be able to kind of listen to something and it not kind of maybe take up half the day or whatever. So it's striking the right balance between giving them enough space to talk naturally about whatever they're an expert or thought leader on, but also bearing in mind that whoever's listening might not want to spend 6 hours listening to you bang on about it.
That's it, isn't it? It's tough.
I mean, I feel like sometimes with our podcast that it is almost a little bit too stringent, and that I would prefer if we just have one guest per episode and we just gave them half an hour to talk. Whereas, but there's so much going on, there's so many different things that we want to include. It's difficult to prioritize.
It's tough when there's so much going on. Me and Tim were discussing it earlier when we listened to a few of them, and then I was listening to one this morning on my way in. Condensing what's going on in those few weeks, with so many things changing, so many variables, it's almost an impossible task that you're pulling off.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I don't do you guys listen to other podcasts? I mean, beyond obviously what we do and in other areas, like what are your favourites?
I do quite a few like sporty ones, I suppose, like the Pete Crouch one, stuff like that, very laid back. I suppose that paints like a negative picture of me. I just sit there listening to the lads in the pub talking about footballs. So probably shows I've got no mates, but there you go.
Well, that's the problem at the moment. Nobody's got any mates because we're all stuck at home. So.
Well, there is that as well. Yeah, I suppose. Cheers for that, Rob. Doing wonders for my ego.
This is the only way I actually get to meet new people at the minute, to be honest. That's why at the end of the podcast, I'm like trying to get another 20 minutes chat with people.
Please just stay.
I mean, I think this is why it came about, really, because we all listen to so many, especially Keelan, our producer, who's just sat nodding away at the back. It's always like, well, Joe Rogan does this, right? And when we watch the Joe Rogan podcast,
young Jamie does it this way, so we have to do it this way. It's a good framework to go from, I guess. Though.
Yeah, it's much different from us. I was sat on my bedroom floor just doing the audio version at the beginning of lockdown, trying to convince my boss that there is some value to doing a podcast. To where we've come, it's been a bit of work, hasn't it? It's been quite hard.
Yeah, I think as well, from where I say it as well, like speaking to people like Rob yourself today and other partners across the world, across England at present.
He's trying to impress you here, Ross.
Try to get that ego back up. It's been really eye-opening, seeing how other people respond to it and seeing how they want to get involved with it, and basically seeing what sort of this engagement can bring across social, across like even I can get emails from like clients going, "Oh, I've listened to that and that had some good pointers about X, Y, Z." So it was like quite interesting from that angle as well.
Yeah, from a partnerships perspective, I think you end up often it's the conversations before and after the end when you finish rolling where we've sort of ended up having some quite good business relationships through it. Just through the chatter when we're not even rolling. So it's quite it's been quite powerful in that respect.
100%.
Yeah, I think it's almost kind of like, because you're opening up that space to just talk about practically anything, you then suddenly start to kind of engage with people or build some rapport with them that you might not otherwise have. If you just a fairly standard kind of telephone call with them or something like that, or a client meeting where it's kind of on what is the specific objective that they've got for you or whatever. So this is all more expansive.
Yeah, it's sort of it takes away from each call being completely loaded and completely weighted down with both sides trying to get something very specific out of it and manoeuvring their way to that point. So I think it's when people open up a little bit and then it's sort of at the end of it, it's a bit more friendly, it's a bit more...
To be fair, you come across something like the marketing an e-com space where, as you described, that they can be loaded and it'd be like, "Oh, we're introducing so-and-so, who's our new partner for so-and-so." And it's like, all right, and they're doing this. And you've said this 6 times. We don't want to hear this. I just want to hear some more meat about what is actually going on with the product. Because from a techie sort of nerdy standpoint, that's what I'm really into.
Yeah. That sort of brings us on to... So Awin Axis, Tim will probably know quite a bit more than me about this. Was this brought together in a direct response to COVID and to what's been going on? How much does it? How involved are you with that?
Yeah, it wasn't actually. So it's kind of a coincidence to the timing of it all, but because I think we were testing it last year in the UK with a few kind of specific smaller businesses and startups, and we recognised that there was obviously, as far as affiliate programs tend to be concerned, like, so Awin, to give you an idea actually of how it's structured from the accounts perspective, you've got kind of your big enterprise clients that we work with, the likes of Nike or HP or some of the Sky or something like that, and then you've got like the next tier, which is kind of your medium-sized enterprises, and then you've got the SME side of it. So you're kind of offering affiliate programs at all of these different scales of business around the world. But when it comes to kind of that really, really small kind of grassroots and kind of sole traders and people that are just starting out, who do need kind of support from a digital marketing perspective to get their kind of names out there, to start growing their businesses, we didn't really offer a solution. And I don't think there's hardly any solutions in the wider industry for that really, really kind of early stage, of a business that's actually just starting. And so obviously for a lot of them, when it comes to digital marketing, they'll naturally refer to Google advertising, to Facebook advertising, because they're the biggest platforms in the world. They're the ones that they'll be most familiar with. But there wasn't really an opportunity for them to kind of branch beyond that into something like affiliates, where they know that they can connect up maybe with local publisher partners who can promote them to local audiences, and they can tie back the marketing that they're doing for them to the sales that they're generating. So it's this kind of like really pure performance ad model. And so Access kind of came off the back of a lot of discussions around that, and the fact that in the States as well, we acquired Share a Sale, who are a big network out in the States, and they are really good at working in specifically this type of niche. And we saw the success that they were having with that kind of model and going after that particular type of businesses, and we thought it was something that we could try to emulate, obviously. So Access was our attempt at doing that. Launched it last year. We're testing it with various clients, and then the plan was obviously to roll it out into various markets around the world this year. But that got accelerated massively because of what happened, and so the pandemic. We saw that a lot of high streets were being locked down. These small businesses who'd never maybe kind of ventured too far into digital marketing all that much, suddenly that demand just spiked because they needed to generate custom, while their shops were closed. And so we accelerated the kind of rollout of Access beyond the UK into several European markets. And I think it's now available in about 8 different European markets at the moment. And we've seen immediate demand from those businesses, from them to kind of start partnering with affiliates. So it's been really successful, and yeah, I think that the timing was just coincidental, really.
That's awesome that was all prepped, and all you have to do is speed up the rollout rather than scramble to actually produce something for it.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, it was. I didn't want to say like we were lucky, because obviously, horrible, but But it was kind of lucky that we had a solution that was available to roll out to businesses, and they could then adopt as part of their digital marketing strategies. And we've seen loads of. It's really cool to see, like it's not just small like new businesses, but there's like a case study that's on the Awin site at the moment about like it's a silversmith. I forget what they're called now, but it's like a small, tiny kind of like silversmith in London, I think somewhere. Owned by a family, run it for years, and they decided that they wanted to try out affiliate marketing, and they used Access, and ever since they've seen like a big increase in the number of sales that they're seeing through their website, and it's exactly that kind of example that I guess we were hoping we would be able to provide support to those like smaller businesses.
I think it's very like on point what you said there, where like people often as a route to market go AdWords, go Facebook, do all that side. But then affiliates is always seen as this top tier thing where you're going to spend a fortune, you're going to obviously get the return on investment, but it requires that initial outlay. Get the word right?
Yeah.
But that often, as you say, like puts people off.
Yeah, it's seen as, I mean, not saying it's in its infancy as a sort of a channel, but it's a lot sort of. It's only started to really establish itself in the last 5 or so years. Would you say? Is that fair to say? As being something that's accessible at those sort of levels of business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the part of the appeal of Access was the fact that a lot of it has been automated, and it's been very streamlined. What we've looked to give these smaller businesses, because we know that. They don't necessarily have the time to kind of dedicate. They couldn't employ kind of a full-time affiliate marketer from their end to just do that for them. And from our side as well, we couldn't necessarily provide full-time support, like a dedicated account manager for each of these individual tiny businesses. So it's about trying to kind of find the right balance of a solution that they can pretty much do most of it all by themselves. We're providing them with all the online resources and tutorials, and we're trying to make it as easy and simple for them to roll out, so that it becomes the equivalent from an affiliate perspective to the way in which you just said, Tim, about an AdWords campaign, that you can do it yourself and you can set it all up yourself. So it's trying to take that model and apply it to affiliates, and so far, I think that it's managed to kind of strike the right balance there.
It's really interesting you say that, because it's something we're trying to develop at the minute. We're finding very similar issues. If some of our clients don't necessarily have someone at their side who's able to sort of pick it up and run with it, when it gets to a level of complexity where you really need someone there doing that type of thing. So we're dabbling with a bit of a managed service at the minute, trying to do it. But what is interesting is we're finding this type of content is a bit more digestible and a bit more accessible to those smaller clients as well. Not necessarily smaller, but again, not necessarily set up to be going down specific marketing paths, if that makes sense. Is that sort of informing any of the content that you're putting together for supporting like an initiative like that?
So that's been produced more by the Access. We've got like a dedicated Access team that kind of are creating content, and so there's resources that they make available to them that they can check out. There's a whole bunch of video tutorials so that when they've got a question about how to set a specific aspect of it up, they can kind of refer to the videos and they'll talk them through like instructional guides and that kind of thing. And then you've got obviously on the other end of it, we're trying to showcase examples of businesses that have already adopted it and that are kind of already seeing successes through it, so that you've got a good idea of, you know, what success looks like, and you've got a tangible idea of like the sort of benchmarks that you should be aiming for, maybe thinking about how you should be recruiting partners and getting the most interface and things like that. So it's a mix of guides that have been produced, and then also obviously sharing insights from those that have already trodden that path and are already starting to see some positive growth there.
It's interesting. It's like a community style setup, really. Like, yeah, we've seen XYZ has achieved this, and as you say, it's not setting that expectation that you're going to come in and become the next Nike. It's just saying you can do this and get to a certain level, grow your revenues, and then maybe look at doing another strategy over here, and then blah 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 blah. And eventually you're growing your revenues incrementally rather than all at once like people think.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like from your guys' perspective, like you're thinking about how you can best do that for some of your clients. What are you thinking? What's the kind of tactics there?
Again, we've introduced a sort of layer of managed service, so we're going to start and try and be that set of hands in the company, basically. But again, it's the video content, it's the being open and honest about sort of internal discussions we're having, and sort of we're doing like these internal podcasts now where we're having some sort of top level business discussion and sort of getting to a point, but on video, and we're finding quite a lot of success with that at the minute. I think it makes us look a bit more open, a bit more honest to people when we're going to them and then pitching this upsell, or we're pitching this new service to them. But it's something that we've come back to time and time again throughout these podcasts. I think people are expecting a certain level of honesty and sort of, it's not necessarily insight, but it's sort of a window into how we're doing things and the discussions we're having about them. I think it comes across as a lot more honest, really. So it's,
if I'm a customer and I'm investing in a system, like it's not just a financial investment. Like we've said, there's that time element as well.
Yeah.
Where I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to look at doing this. I'm going to set this campaign up. What I want to see is almost at top level, as you say, the people who are inventing this system behind us and are providing this know what they're talking about. I know how they can get me to our level as well.
So if they're going to put the trust in us doing it, basically we're showing them that at least we're thinking about it in a way that they're thinking about it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So Rob, what's the future looking like for content over at Awin then? What do you reckon you're going to be putting the most sort of resource and time into moving forward?
Yeah, well, it's it's getting to the period of the year now where the Awin report is front of mind. So they always take a few months, and I think I'm already behind schedule, so that's great. We're hoping to get the next one out, I think early February.
Okay.
So that's the kind of deadline that we'll be aiming for. But obviously, like things have changed a lot. So I think we're going to have to adapt the report to. I'm not going to say the new normal because we agreed that those happy terms. But essentially, we need to. What I was explaining earlier about the report is that it was this physical printed thing that you would give out at conferences, and people would tangibly be able to flick through and kind of read it. And that's not. Conferences, I don't know how many were necessarily going to appear at next year, how many are going to go ahead. So we're going to have to rethink exactly what we do with the report. And I think that it's probably got to be adapted for being consumed primarily online. And if that's the case, then you can't just expect people to digest it by reading page after page of articles and text. That's just not really very user friendly. So I think we're going to have to adapt our plans in that respect.
How have you adapted from not going to those sort of trade shows and conferences and things like that?
Yeah, but I think we're still getting our head around it a little bit. I mean, we've been doing a hell of a lot more webinars, and obviously that's the case for everyone. I mean, part of me feels like they're being a bit done to death, and but it's very hard to be kind of creative and innovative around the format because you know, when you've got like you're presenting and you want to impart information and insight, a presentation is generally the kind of best way of doing that. And so we've been trying to kind of like host kind of like a series of different webinars, which focus generally on different sectors, because I think that there's a real appetite for, from a business perspective, trying to understand exactly what's happening within sectors right now, because we're seeing such massive variances between, you know, you look at something like travel, which has inevitably plummeted. Then you look at other sectors like within retail and home and garden, for instance, has absolutely exploded. So there's such massive variances between those individual sectors that we think that it's best to almost approach it on a sector-led perspective. And we've kind of tried to invite panelists and experts from across the industry in those sectors to tell us a bit about what's happening and what they're seeing. And hopefully, by getting that mix of different opinions and angles, the audience are taking away something that they can kind of use themselves.
It's interesting you say that. So obviously with the sort of travel industry, when we're looking at that vertical, there's an expected drop there. Nobody's traveling, nobody's been able to do the things they were doing last year. So you'd imagine that was how it would look. But have there been any sort of big surprises in the way of industries that you've seen affected specifically from an affiliate perspective?
Yeah, I think there's well, I mean, there's always the kind of like anomalies and the funny ones that are quite interesting to see. So I mean, I was actually putting together a presentation around some of the trends that we've seen from a shopping perspective in the UK over the last kind of like 9 months or so. And so when we first went into lockdown and people were stuck at home, and for those of us that were obviously remote working, etc., we saw a massive increase in people switching their kind of broadband contracts. Okay. So people were upgrading a lot of the time to fibre. And we saw like a huge amount of growth in terms of fibre broadband contracts being bought. And you can, relate that to the fact that, people were trying to make sure that if they're doing a podcast on Zoom, for instance, that they make sure that their internet connection isn't going to cut out halfway through. So we saw a huge spike in that, I think, around March and April. We saw travel bookings decline around then as well. Obviously, people were kind of not booking holidays and not going abroad. And one of the interesting things there was also the fact that for those people that were booking, because there were still kind of a minority of people that were booking holidays, for those that were, what we saw was the lag time between when they were booking their holiday and when the holiday actually was due to commence extended massively. So previously what we would see is that, there might be an average lag time of about maybe 30 days or something. So people would book their holiday and then 30 days later they would kind of go off and, go and have it. But what we saw during April was that window lag expanded up to about, I think the average was around about 90 days or so, which makes kind of natural sense again, because you think, okay, this pandemic is an issue, the lockdown's an issue, planes have been grounded around the world and hotels aren't opening, etc. So I'm not going to book my holiday for next month, but I might book it for 3 months time or 4 months time, etc. And so they're kind of it was fairly optimistic. I mean, I wouldn't have gone anywhere near a holiday booking at that time, I don't think. But people were kind of, those that were committed to trying to get abroad and get away were obviously booking it that much further down the road. I mean, and subsequent to that, for those people that weren't booking holidays, I mentioned home and garden, and we saw that DIY sales had just kind of exploded. People were spending a load of time in their garden, and that's what, we're lucky enough that we've got a little garden here where I live in London, And we were spending like loads of time out there, and we were kind of like buying plants, and I was watching like Gardener's World on a Friday night, and I got to know Monty Don like really well through that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's been like quite a slice of normality actually, watching shows like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm never normally into it, but my wife, she often watches Gardener's World. She likes a bit of Monty Don, and I've found myself sat it's just like a nice break. Like it's a nice half an hour of tranquility.
Who is Monty Don?
You don't know Monty Don?
Don't have a clue.
One day.
I was laughing at Gardener's World. Next up, Country File.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's your holiday for the year on Country File.
You can still go into your garden. No, it's viable. It's a viable hobby.
It's true, yeah. Monty Don is the most chilled man in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for your mental health, I think. Just watching Monty Don pottering around in his garden, planting some flowers. So, but yeah, so we saw kind of like garden sales absolutely rocketed, and there was like usually like the biggest kind of growing businesses they do tend to be a lot of the like established giants that you know about, and but everything went kind of a bit topsy-turvy during lockdown for what we were seeing internally, and there was like a seed supplier that we saw who just kind of completely rocketed to the top of the growth charts that we were seeing internally, because so many people were getting into gardening. I think there was, when there was a real panic around getting fresh fruit and veg from the supermarkets, because everything was, the shelves were empty. Like people were genuinely thinking, am I going to have to start growing my own fruit and veg at home and stuff? So we were seeing seeds of these products.
That's
just kind
crazy.
And then, I mean, the funniest one was just the fact that sex toys and kind of erotic as a subcategory just absolutely grew massively over the summer as well. So yeah, that was interesting.
I think I remember saying that as well. It was things like Pelotons, and then it was like vibrators at the same end. But it was like, I remember saying, I think it was like an Awin power ranking sort of thing, and it was like sectors moving up, and it was like indoor health equipment, as you say, like erotic equipment. Yeah.
Seeds just fly.
Sounds like a wild Friday, that.
Yeah. You want to do Gardener's World, Peloton, and then obviously some sex toys.
I'll take it. Done.
What was quite funny was the fact that we were doing presentations around that time. We were obviously, sharing some of these insights with our clients and everything, and the design team have got like there's certain iconography that they need to use, obviously, to denote the different sectors that we're talking about. So you've got travel to play, you've got DIY, you've got like a screwdriver or something, and the sex toys one was kind of like a set of fluffy handcuffs that they managed to find. That's all been embedded in our PowerPoint now, which is great.
That's amazing. Obviously, we have a search product here, so we're tracking searches and things like that. So you can imagine some of the sex toy clients we have, some of the erotic style things. You'd be the imagination of some of the people, what they're searching for. Unbelievable.
It's some of these things I don't even know what you use it for, but it's there. People have it. Each to their own. If you're listening,
it probably looks more like you'd use it on Gardener's World than you actually would in any other way. So
that's why Monty's so chill.
That's why Monty's.
That must be it. Yeah, you would want to get the two types of implement.
Some garden shears plus. Oh wow!
Right, that's probably the best end we've ever had. That there. So I think we'll finish it on what's the future looking like for you then, Rob? What the next 6 months looking like in regards to content and what you're thinking strategy wise?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like the report is the main priority over the next few months, and so that's going to be a big task. And we've got a white paper coming out shortly in the next few weeks, which is something we're doing in partnership with SingleView, who are our attribution.
Okay, yeah.
So we're doing some insights around what they've been seeing over the course of the lockdown and what that means for how advertisers might be attributing spend at the moment. So yeah, a lot of that. And then, and to be honest with you, like you say, over the next 6 months, I'm actually on paternity leave in theory from early Feb. So it's like,
Congrats.
hopefully, cheers, the report gets delivered, and then hopefully the baby gets delivered. So
Perfect timing.
It's a pretty big 6 months.
That is, yeah, to be fair. And where can everybody find the Awin Global podcast?
So yeah, Awin Talks. It's on the Awin Market Insights section of the site. But I think if you just Google Awin Talks, then hopefully our SEO should stand us up well.
Okay, awesome. Right, thank you very much. Cheers for joining us.
Pleasure, Rob.
Thank you. Cheers.